Arab executive gave his coat to a shivering African at the train station, without knowing she was a secret heiress who... He didn't know her name. He only saw her trembling in the cold, clutching a torn backpack and standing alone under the flickering lights of the train station. Without hesitation, he took off his $1,000 coat and draped it over her shoulders, then walked away into the night. What he didn't know was that this moment, this single act of compassion, would come back to change his entire life. Because the woman he helped, she wasn't who he thought she was, not even close. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss a single story that will touch your heart and leave you speechless. We promise, what you're about to witness will stay with you long after the final scene. The train station was nearly empty, except for the hum of flickering lights and the distant echo of a delayed announcement. Snow was falling harder now, blanketing the tracks in a soft, cruel silence. Tariq al-Hamdan, a tall man in a dark wool coat, stood at the edge of the platform, checking the time on his engraved gold watch. The cold bit at his skin, but he barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere. Negotiations, meetings, an upcoming flight to Dubai. Time was money. And yet something stopped him that night. She stood alone by the bench, a young African woman, wrapped in a thin, worn jacket that clung to her like wet paper. Her hair was braided tight, her cheeks red from the cold, and her hands trembled as she gripped the straps of a dusty backpack. She didn't look up. She just stood there, frozen, like the cold had swallowed her whole. Tariq hesitated. He was used to looking past people. His life moved too fast, his world too high above the everyday. But something in her stillness pierced through his detachment, like a thread pulling at a tightly wound fabric. He took a step toward her, then another. She didn't flinch. Without saying a word, Tariq slipped his coat from his shoulders. The tailored fabric still held the warmth of his body as he gently placed it over hers. She blinked, startled, her lips parting in confusion. "I'm fine," she said quickly, her voice quiet but proud. "You don't have to. It's just a coat," he interrupted, his voice calm, deep, with the faint trace of an Emirati accent. "And you're freezing." She opened her mouth to argue, but his eyes stopped her. Not cold, not condescending, just kind. It was rare to see that kind of kindness in the eyes of a stranger, especially from a man dressed like wealth itself. He gave her a small nod, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd that began trickling in for the late-night train. He didn't look back. He didn't ask for her name. And for some reason, that made it even harder for her to breathe. She clutched the coat around her, inhaling its expensive scent, something between oud and warm leather. And for the first time in hours, she stopped shivering. She didn't know that the man who had just saved her from the cold was one of the most powerful tech executives in the Gulf region. Tariq Al-Hamdan, founder of the fastest-growing AI infrastructure company in the Middle East. Billionaire, elusive, heart made of stone according to the press. But she had just seen a side of him no headline had ever printed. And he didn't know her either. He didn't know that the woman with frost-bitten fingers and a crumpled bag was actually Aminata Keita, heiress to one of the largest cocoa empires in West Africa. A woman who had chosen exile, not poverty. A woman hiding from something too big, too dark, to name just yet. As the train pulled in and the wind howled louder, Aminata sat on the bench, wrapped in his coat like it was armor. She watched the doors slide open, watched strangers bored with steaming cups and tired eyes. But she didn't move. She just stared at the space where he had been, her breath forming clouds in the night air. She had no idea they would meet again, but the next time they did, it wouldn't be as strangers. And this time, neither of them would be ready. 3 weeks passed. The coat never left Aminata's side. She had tried several times to take it to a dry cleaner, to fold it neatly and put it away. But something about it, the warmth, the scent, the way it had been given without expectation, felt like a lifeline, not to comfort, but to something else. Something she hadn't had in a long time. Safety. She now lived in a modest flat, in a working-class district just outside the city. Nothing luxurious, but enough for someone trying to disappear. She worked part-time in a small book cafe, tucked between a florist and a laundromat, where most customers didn't bother to ask questions. That's how she liked it. Until the envelope came. It was waiting for her at the counter one grey morning, resting between coffee-stained order slips and receipts. A black envelope. No stamp. Just her name, Aminata Keita, written in silver ink, like someone had known she would be there. She froze. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a heavy cream cardstock, thick and expensive. Her eyes widened as she read the words. "You are cordially invited to the Al-Hamdan Foundation Charity Gala. Location, Palais Doré, 8:00 p.m., Saturday. Dress code, formal. Invitation admits one." Her mouth went dry. Tariq Al-Hamdan. She hadn't seen or heard from him since the train station. No contact, no message. She had wondered if maybe he was just a ghost, a fleeting kindness in a world that rarely offered any. But this was no coincidence. Her first instinct was to throw it away. She wasn't ready. She wasn't safe. People from her past could still be looking for her. But something about that night, his eyes, the calm in his voice, the way he didn't ask for anything, kept echoing through her. What did he want now? And how did he even find her? Saturday came quickly. She tried to resist. She told herself it was dangerous. But when she stood in front of the mirror that night, dressed in a long black gown borrowed from a co-worker, something inside her had shifted. She wasn't hiding tonight. She was walking into the lion's den. The Palais Doré was every inch as opulent as the name promised. Glass chandeliers, golden columns, and violins playing under a vaulted ceiling, painted like a Renaissance dream. Rich men in tuxedos and women in gowns floated around, laughing with glasses of champagne. And then she saw him. Tariq stood at the top of the marble stairs, wearing a sharp midnight suit and no tie. His presence alone silenced the air around him. People watched him more than they approached him, as if his power made them hesitate. He turned his head, and their eyes met. It was like the noise around her faded. In that instant, Aminata forgot how to breathe. Tariq descended the stairs slowly, never looking away. When he finally reached her, his voice was as low and smooth as she remembered. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I almost didn't," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "How did you find me?" A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Some things are better left unanswered, for now." She studied him, trying to read between the lines. This wasn't a man used to chasing after people. He didn't seem desperate. He seemed intrigued. "I wanted to return your coat," she said quietly. "I kept it longer than I should have." "I didn't invite you to get my coat back," he said, eyes softening. "I invited you because I haven't stopped thinking about you." She froze. Tariq stepped closer, not enough to touch her, but enough for her to feel the heat of his words. "There's something about you, Aminata. That night, you were alone, but you didn't look broken. You looked strong and lost. And maybe I recognized something in you." Aminata swallowed hard, her heart thudding in her chest. She hadn't planned on this, on feeling again, on someone seeing past the mask she wore every single day. But now she stood face to face with a man who saw through it like glass, and that scared her more than anything. The gala shimmered around them. Clinking glasses, soft violins, elegant whispers in foreign tongues. But to Aminata, the room had narrowed down to just him. Tariq. His presence was calm but commanding, the kind of man who didn't chase, yet she felt unmistakably chosen. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to breathe again, to exist as something more than a runaway with secrets stitched into her spine. She even smiled, an honest, unguarded smile, before the familiar ache returned. She was being watched. Aminata's skin prickled. She had felt it before, eyes that didn't belong, following her from a corner or across the street. She scanned the room, trying to stay subtle. And then she saw him. Far back by the bar, half hidden behind a marble pillar, stood a man in a grey coat. He wasn't mingling. He wasn't holding a drink. He was staring. Right at her. Tariq noticed the shift in her. Her posture stiffened, The glint in her eye changed from curiosity to something else. Fear. "Is everything all right?" he asked gently, stepping closer. "I think I need some air," she said quickly. Without waiting for a reply, she turned and walked toward the terrace, heels clicking against polished marble. The cold night air hit her lungs like a wave of relief. She gripped the edge of the railing, trying to slow her breathing. She shouldn't have come. She knew it. She was supposed to be invisible. The moment she let herself step into his world, she had painted a target on her back. Tariq followed moments later quietly. He didn't push, just stood beside her, hands in his pockets, letting the silence settle before he spoke. "Tell me the truth, Aminata. Who are you running from?" She flinched. "Why would you think I'm running?" "Because I've done it too," he said, his voice low, honest. "And I recognize the weight." She didn't answer right away. Her breath formed clouds in the air, and for a second she considered walking away again. But something about him, his stillness, the softness beneath his strength, cracked the wall she had kept up for years. "My father died suddenly," she began, her voice uneven. "Left the company to me. I didn't want it. I wasn't ready. And the people who thought it should have gone to someone else didn't take it well." She turned to look at him, her eyes dark and sharp. "One of them threatened to kill me if I didn't disappear. So I did. I gave up everything. I erased myself." Tariq's expression didn't change. No shock, no pity, just quiet understanding. "You went from heiress to nobody in one night." Aminata nodded. "And I've been hiding ever since." Tariq stepped closer. "Who was the man inside? The one who followed you with his eyes like he owned you?" "I don't know his name," she whispered. "But I've seen him before. Always in places I don't expect. Never speaking. Just watching." Her voice cracked. "I don't know what they want from me anymore. But I can't let them find me." Tariq didn't hesitate. He took her hand. Warm, firm, steady. "You're not alone anymore." The words settled into her chest, like a heartbeat she had forgotten she had. But fear still lingered behind her eyes. "You don't know what they're capable of, Tariq." "And you don't know what I am," he replied. "You see a man in a suit. But I built my empire from the dust of betrayal. I know what it's like to be hunted, and I never leave someone behind when I know they deserve to be safe." Aminata blinked back sudden tears. It had been years since someone had offered her safety. Not protection, not control, but real, human safety. And it was terrifying. Inside, the music swelled again. But on the terrace, something heavier had taken root. An invisible line had been crossed, two lives beginning to tangle in ways neither had planned. Then, behind them, the door creaked. A waiter stepped out with a tray, but the glint of his eye wasn't friendly, and from the far side of the terrace, the man in the gray coat was now gone. but he had seen enough. The night should have ended with champagne and silk. Instead, it ended with shattered glass and blood. Tariq had noticed it the moment they stepped back inside. The energy of the room had shifted. The laughter was forced, the elegance brittle. Security guards now lingered near the exits, whispering into their earpieces. And that man, the one in the gray coat, was nowhere to be found. He tightened his hand around Aminata's as they moved through the crowd. She was silent, but he could feel the tension in her body like a live wire. Every step she took, she looked over her shoulder, eyes darting like prey sensing the hunter. Then it happened. A scream. The unmistakable crash of glass exploding somewhere near the stage. And then chaos. Guests shrieked and ducked. Champagne flutes hit the floor. A chandelier flickered violently above them. Something had shattered, intentionally. Tariq reacted faster than anyone. He grabbed Aminata by the waist and pulled her down behind the nearest marble column as screams filled the ballroom. Security burst into action. Men in black suits surged forward. The MC's voice blared through the speakers, trying to regain control, but it was too late. The room had erupted into panic. Tariq held her tightly. She was trembling. "Stay with me," he said, steady but urgent. "Don't move, unless I say so." "I knew it," she whispered, her voice broken. "They found me. They're warning me." He looked her dead in the eye. This wasn't a warning. His mind was racing. Who would be bold enough to send a message like this in front of him? In his city, in his house? This wasn't just a threat to Aminata anymore. It was a challenge to him. Moments later, a bodyguard he trusted, a tall man named Idris, came rushing toward them, pushing through the crowd. "Sir, we need to evacuate, now." "Anyone injured?" Tariq asked as he pulled Aminata up. "Nothing fatal, but this was coordinated. The lights were hacked. Someone triggered the fire alarms at the same time as the crash. It was meant to cause a scene." Tariq didn't speak. His mind was already calculating every move, every face in the crowd, every shadowed corner. "Get my car around the back," he ordered. "And get her out first." "No," Aminata cut in. "I'm not leaving you behind." Tariq paused, surprised. For a woman who had spent years running, something in her had changed. She wasn't running now. She was standing her ground. "I'm not letting anything happen to you," she said. "I mean it." He stared at her for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "Then we go together." They moved swiftly through a service corridor behind the ballroom, guided by Idris. The exit door was already open, the cold night air rushing in like a slap. The black armored SUV sat idling at the curb. Aminata climbed in first, Tariq right behind her. As the door shut, Tariq's phone vibrated. A message, no name, no number, just a single sentence on the screen. You can't protect what doesn't belong to you. He showed it to her. Her face went pale. I know who sent that, she said, voice barely a whisper. It's him. Who is him, Aminata? Tariq asked, sharp. She looked at him with wide, haunted eyes. His name is Qasim. He was my father's most trusted advisor, until he tried to take everything after his death. When I refused to sign the company over, he said he'd take it by force. Tariq's jaw clenched. And you disappeared. I had no choice, she said. I didn't know who to trust. My own uncle sided with him. I was supposed to die that night. Tariq turned toward the window, the city lights flashing past them. But his mind was already somewhere else. Calculating, strategizing. You're not going back into hiding, he said finally. I won't allow it. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, he snapped, voice low and dangerous. You walked into my life and changed it. And now that they've threatened you in my presence, this isn't just your fight anymore. It's mine. Aminata blinked, stunned by the fire behind his words. You're not a guest in my world, Aminata. You're part of it now. And in the silence that followed, she realized something terrifying and beautiful at once. She had just become the most protected woman in Dubai. The next morning dawned sharp and golden over the skyline of Dubai. But inside Tariq's private penthouse suite, the light felt cold. Aminata sat at the edge of a velvet chaise lounge, wrapped in a silk robe, the scent of black coffee and incense lingering in the air. Her fingers trembled slightly around the porcelain cup. She hadn't slept. How could she? Tariq stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city that now felt like a chessboard. Every building a piece, every shadow a potential move. He had called in his closest advisors at dawn. Only 2 had answered in person. The rest had sent excuses. Cowards. He glanced back at her. She hadn't spoken much since the attack, but he could tell her mind hadn't stopped racing. We're going to take him down, he said firmly. Aminata looked up. You don't even know where he is. I know more than you think, he replied, stepping toward her. But first, I need to find out who opened the door for him. Her brow furrowed. What do you mean? Qasim couldn't have infiltrated the gala alone. That security team was hand-picked. Someone from my inner circle let him in. Someone close, trusted. The weight of the words hung in the room like smoke. Moments later, Idris entered, his eyes tense, his movements clipped. He placed a black file on the coffee table. These are all the guests who RSVP'd to the gala, cross-referenced with the security logs from the back entrance and the surveillance cams. But one feed was wiped clean, the hallway near the cellar. Tariq's jaw tightened. The only person who has access to overwrite that feed is... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. A name burned behind his eyes. Zayed, his oldest friend. his head of operations, the one who had flown with him to Berlin to pitch their first funding deal, the man who knew every inch of Tariq's empire and had warned him subtly not to get involved with strangers in train stations. Tariq stormed out of the room. "Stay here," he told Aminata without looking back. But Aminata didn't stay. She followed, barefoot, silent, her robe sweeping over marble floors as she kept to the shadows. Something in her gut told her she needed to see this, to hear it, all of it. She found them in the private conference room. Zayed stood at the far end, cool and collected in a crisp gray suit. His expression didn't shift when Tariq entered like a storm. "You," Tariq said through clenched teeth. "You let him in." Zayed blinked slowly. "I did what was necessary. You betrayed everything we built. I protected it," Zayed snapped, stepping forward. "You think letting her into your life doesn't put everything at risk? Look at you, Tariq. You were distracted, soft. You almost got killed for a woman you don't even know." Tariq's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "Don't speak about her like that." Zayed laughed bitterly. "She's a ghost, Tariq. A walking target. And you're dragging all of us into her war." Aminata felt every word like a blade. She stepped into the room. "I didn't ask for any of this," she said, voice shaking. "I didn't ask him to save me, or to fight for me. But he did. And he made that choice with more honor than you've ever shown." Zayed's eyes widened in surprise. "So the heiress speaks." Tariq moved between them. "You're done here," he said, voice like steel. "Your access is revoked. Your position is terminated. Leave before I make you leave." Zayed paused, his jaw twitching. Then he turned and walked out, his silence louder than any words. Tariq stood frozen for a moment before turning to Aminata. "Are you all right?" She nodded, but the truth was, she wasn't sure. "What if he's right?" she whispered. "What if I'm just a curse? What if loving me destroys everything?" Tariq stepped forward and cupped her face with both hands, eyes burning with truth. "Then let everything burn," he said softly, "because I would still choose you." Her breath caught, the last of her walls, the final thread of resistance, unraveled between them. But just as their lips almost touched, a phone buzzed on the table. Tariq grabbed it. Another message. "You chose the wrong side, Alhamdan. Now watch what I do next." Attached was a live feed of someone in a black mask entering Tariq's private garage and walking straight toward his younger sister's car. Tariq's hands tightened around the phone as the live feed continued to play. The man in the black mask moved like a ghost, precise, calm, unhurried. Surveillance footage from the underground garage showed his sister Salma unlocking her car, unaware that danger was seconds away. "No," Tariq whispered. "Not her." Aminata rushed to his side, Her breath caught in her throat. "Is that your—" "Yes," he cut her off, already grabbing his earpiece and barking into it. "Security breach in Sector D, garage level 3. I want every exit locked down. Now." But he already knew they were too late. As they watched, the masked man moved behind Salma. There was a flash, something metallic, and then the feed cut to static. The silence that followed was suffocating. Aminata stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "They're sending a message. Qasim knows he's losing control. That's why he's coming after the people you love." "He wants me to feel helpless," Tariq muttered, his fists clenched. "He wants me to submit." "You won't," she said firmly. "You're not that man." He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time, he didn't see the frightened woman from the train station. He saw fire in her eyes, purpose, courage. "I know how Qasim thinks," she continued. "I grew up watching him manipulate my father, twist people around his finger. He's not reckless. If he took your sister, it means he wants something in return. Something he can't take by force." Tariq's jaw tightened. "He wants you." The weight of those words sank into the room like ice. "I won't let him trade my sister's life for yours," he said. "There has to be another way." "There is," Aminata whispered. "But you're not going to like it." 2 hours later, inside Tariq's secure command center, an underground bunker outfitted with tech only the government dreamed of. The plan was in motion. Aminata sat at the center of the room, her hair pulled back, dressed in black tactical clothing that clung to her like second skin. It had been years since she wore anything like it, since she had felt in control. But today wasn't about hiding. It was about finishing what had started the day her father died. "I'll go alone," she said, staring straight at the screen showing Qasim's private compound. "He wants me, so I'll give him exactly what he wants." Tariq paced behind her, furious. "This is insane." "No," she said, rising to her feet. "Insane is running forever. I'm done being hunted, Tariq, and I'm done letting innocent people get hurt because of me." He grabbed her wrist. "You don't need to prove anything." "I'm not doing this to prove something," she said softly. "I'm doing this because I finally have something to protect too." She looked up at him, their eyes locked in silence. "And because I trust you to get me out." Tariq's heart thundered in his chest. He wanted to stop her, to shield her, but more than anything, he respected her. And that meant letting her walk straight into the fire, knowing he'd follow with everything he had. Idris entered with a device. "We just got a ping. Qasim sent a location. Abandoned airstrip outside the city. No surveillance. No signals. Classic." Aminata nodded. "Then that's where I'll go." Tariq placed a tiny comms chip behind her ear and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I'll be listening the whole time. And I'll be counting on you," she whispered. The sun had started to set, when Aminata arrived at the airstrip. No cars, no sound, just the wind brushing across cracked concrete and the faint outline of a private jet sitting idle in the distance. She stepped forward slowly, every instinct in her body screaming. But she didn't run. A voice echoed across the lot. "Well, well, the princess returns." Qasim emerged from the shadows, dressed in a tailored coat, a serpent smile on his face. 2 armed men flanked him. Behind them, Salma stood, hands bound, bruised, but alive. "You've caused quite a mess, Aminata," Qasim said, "but I'll be merciful. Come with me willingly." And the girl walks away. Aminata lifted her chin. "You really think I came here alone?" Qasim chuckled. "You were always bold." She smirked. "Not bold. Prepared." Suddenly, from every direction, black SUVs roared onto the airstrip. Doors flew open. Tactical teams stormed in. Tariq emerged at the front, dressed in black, eyes locked on Qasim. And this time, he wasn't alone. Qasim froze as the tactical team surrounded him. For the first time, the man who had ruled by fear saw fear reflected in his own eyes. Tariq stepped forward, calm but lethal. "You touched my family," he said coldly. "That was your last mistake." Aminata rushed to Salma, untying her hands. They embraced, shaken but safe. Qasim's men dropped their weapons as they were overwhelmed. It was over. Almost. Qasim, restrained, locked eyes with Aminata. "You think you've won?" he spat. "No," she whispered. "I know I have." Back at the penthouse, silence spoke louder than words. Salma rested. Idris debriefed the team, and Aminata stood alone on the balcony, watching the lights of the city she once feared. Tariq joined her, his coat draped over his shoulder. "You were the bravest person out there," he said. She turned to him. "I didn't feel brave." "You didn't have to. You just had to choose not to run, and you did." A beat passed. Then quietly he asked, "So, what happens now?" She smiled. "Now, I stop hiding." A week later, at a private event for survivors of war and exile, Aminata stood beside Tariq, no longer in hiding. She gave a speech that moved the room to tears. Her past was no longer her prison. It had become her purpose. Afterward, Tariq took her hand and led her away from the crowd toward the quiet of the garden. "I never believed in fate," he said, pulling her close. "But you feel like the only thing in my life that wasn't a business decision." She looked up at him, heart steady now. "And you were the first risk I ever said yes to." They kissed, and the city, beneath their feet, kept shining.